Well, we'll start. So, Mary Brown, thank you very, very much for agreeing to record this video with me. So, just for for those watching, I listened to Mary at the Sharing Best Practice Auckland conference that we had at Summerland School, and Mary is a teacher at Summerland School, and her session was very well attended, and it just created such a buzz. So many brilliant nuggets of just really practical, here's what I do in my classroom, and this is what's been happening for the kids as we do it. So thank you so much, Mary, for agreeing to be brave and record this for more people to be able to listen to your excellent advice and hear the cool things that you've been doing in your class.
Very kind.
Thank you. So I thought it would be great if you would just tell us a wee bit about, how your career to date in education, and then you can launch into your great content.
Cool. Well, hi everyone. My name's Mary, obviously, and I teach year 5, 6 at Summerland Primary School, and I hope you find something useful. I have been teaching for 45 years, and I have taught all levels from new entrant through to year 8. I have taught in full primary, intermediate, contributing schools, and I still love it. And I get excited to come to school most days. And please understand that I am no expert when it comes to whole class literacy, but I am really enjoying what I'm learning, and it has been a really steep learning curve. So my practice looked quite a bit different to how it looks today. I'm going to explain what I used to do and what I do now, and plus I have a few goals, as I'm sure all of you do. So I've been teaching year 5 and 6 for the last 7 or 8 years. And back in 2018, my reading block usually had about 5 groups. I had 2 high needs students, and they worked with a learning assistant. And the groups would progress throughout the week, rotating through various activities. And all of these groups were levels based. And they went from yellow level through to a reading age of 13 and up. One group was with me, and the rest worked independently, apart from the 2 who were with the learning assistant. The groups, after the groups had finished their instructional time with me, which was about 15 minutes, they did a follow-up task, a worksheet of some sort. After that, they would be silently reading or playing a literacy game, poem cards, reading off a website or whatever. I had laminated cards that I moved across a whiteboard each day to show where each group was working and their tasks for that session. Most kids were on task, and I knew that I was to focus on the students who were working with me. It was a bit frantic because I was constantly with one eye on the groups around the classroom, as well as teaching the group in front of me. The levelled texts, they were not very exciting for the struggling readers. The more able readers, they were interesting for the students and for me, and we learned quite a bit. So this is an example from a part of my planning from 2018. That particular term, I was focusing on predicting, visualizing, and synthesizing. That was my focus, and any text that could be used somehow to support it would be read with the group. This was pretty hard to do with the students who were reading the early readers. There were lots of different activities, and some of these, as you can see, were really good for presentation and displays. So we would have regular conferences, and these were often on a Friday. The names have been removed from the left side there. And I asked about what the student was reading in their silent reading time, and we discussed the text. I did not always know the text, of course, and I had them read a passage from their text to me. I had lots of long-term plans also, but you get the idea. I tried my best to implement everything that I knew to do. All of the groups had their own goals. The students knew what these goals were, and here are a couple of the student goals, and these are from the lower level texts. These were year 5 and 6 children. So you can see that these children with these particular goals were reading very simple texts. And I think one of them was yellow level. In writing, so I had a mini lesson that would be about 10 minutes at the start, and most of the rest of the writing session was conferences, and each of these would be about 5 minutes each. And then there was a 5-minute wrap-up, kind of a mini lesson sharing at the end, and that would be approximately an hour a week. Now where's the hour a week? That is meant that the children would get approximately an hour a week with me. So why I changed, we all had to carry out inquiries and document them on a blog. And I did this grudgingly, being time poor as we all are. And I can't quite remember how it all started, but I did start reading about whole class guided reading. And I was surprised to learn that this was a thing. I was always under the impression that you couldn't have too many groups. And this sounded far more sensible than what I was doing. And then I started reading everything I could find about it. So this was what was happening in the UK, and I copied it. So we sat in a circle so that there was always a neighbour if a child needed some help. Buddies were matched by having a stronger reader with one needing a bit of help. More able readers were matched at the mid-level, and the mid-level buddied with those who found reading a challenge. So you've kind of got your list of kiddies, and the one more able would start sort of there, and you'd match them up kind of like that, not right from the top right to the very bottom. Rulers, all children tracked or they followed with a ruler or something similar. This meant that if you got lost, you could take a sneaky peek at your buddy. It also meant that as I watched, I could see that all the students were following along. And back then, I would read the text aloud and the children would follow along. But now we more often do echo reading, where I read the sentence and they repeat it. Now, I started with a mix of mostly fiction and some non-fiction. As time went on, I noticed that the kids really seemed to prefer non-fiction. They really liked knowing that they knew stuff. And we began to have some really good discussions around that, and we still do. And many of the questions I can't answer, so either they or I can find out the answers to that if it's something that we are interested in. This year there was a question that I asked, and who was Captain Cook? And this was from a text to do with our study on the early Pacific explorers. Anyway, there were a few incorrect responses until we finally got, wasn't he that pirate in the Peter Pan movie? At that point, I stopped the conversation and said that the first student who could provide the correct answer the next day would be given a certificate. They had to convince me that they knew. So many came busting in through the door the next morning, so I gave out quite a few certificates, and that was quite fun. If the text was from the news, like an online site like Stuff, where I would copy and paste and create my own text, I would sometimes have a very short video clip at the end of our reading as a kind of treat or reward. But I discovered that having it at the start worked better, and it also provided some correct background knowledge. So moving on to this year, I have a learning assistant. I'm just going to take a little drink. So I have a learning assistant assigned to a child who has very high needs. And this student sometimes works out of the class with the learning assistant or another specialist teacher who comes in every week. This student still gets a copy of the text, and she listens into many of the discussions. The children each have a reading buddy, and I'm going to share what happens in a typical week in literacy in my class. But please bear in mind, this changes as I learn. This was not exactly what was happening this time last year, and it will likely not be what will be happening this time in another year from now. So now I have one good text for all the learners in the room. No one is excluded. I spend around 20 minutes with the whole class reading and discussing the text. Every child, every day, and no one misses out on time with me. The first 20 minutes of the day are with my Tier 2 group, and the more able readers are working independently. They're often on a site called ReadWorks. The kids enjoy it, and there are some reading options on that site as well as the stuff that I assign them. They're also quite motivated because they can get certificates from me, depending on the quality of their work produced there. These certificates are tied into our school badge system. That gives me the time I need for those needing the extra time with me. And then after that 20 minutes, the whole class comes together, and then we discuss the vocab and we read the text together as a whole class. I changed the buddies as needed. For example, one buddy was too dominating, so I switched that buddy to a more workable pairing. Generally, though, they work pretty well. So the text. The selection of the text can make or break the session. I try to use text that contains some good knowledge and that the kids will have some questions about, and that is also it's something that's really worth our time. The text might be related to a class chapter book. We read a book about the Otago Gold Rush, so then we read some factual texts about that particular time. We read texts about refugees following on from our class chapter book about a refugee. We read texts about World War II following on from a chapter book set in that time. I find that the pairings of a great class chapter book with related non-fiction texts to read as a class works really well. When the students are learning from both fiction and non-fiction texts, it really brings it all to life. The texts don't always arise that way, though. It can be about something current, like Matariki or the Olympics, elections or Anzac Day, and so on. It could be a good topic about New Zealand or world history or geography, for example, the continents of the world or ancient Egypt. The topic might only last 1 week, for example, the elections, because it was the week after the holidays. Or it could be 3 or 4 weeks, as we did with the continents and the ancient wonders. And it really depends on the number of quality texts that I can get around that topic. The biggest one we just finished was probably 6 or 7 weeks, and it was on ancient Egypt, and it tied in with the trip to the museum. And I was so proud of the kids on that trip. The comments they were making at the museum because they'd read so much, I felt, yeah, it was really cool, and they absolutely loved it. But I was able to keep getting plenty of texts. We read about Cleopatra and so on, so that was really cool. They loved it. So the text is always aimed at the more able readers in the room, and it is age appropriate. Everyone gets to be in on the rich discussion about the topic, not just the kids in the top group. They've all got ears, they've all got mouths, so they can all hear and they can all discuss the text. They don't need to be able to read it fluently to be in on the conversations. As I mentioned, there might be a video clip at the start. We don't spend time completing any KWL charts like I used to. Those letters refer to what I already know, what I want to learn, and what I've learned charts or similar. I no longer ask for what they already know because many will add information that is simply not correct, and I do not want facts that are not true being reinforced in any way. So I provide a brief explanation if required. They usually know something already. For example, the topic at the end of term 3 was refugees, because we had been reading a class chapter book about a refugee, so they already had a fair bit of knowledge, background knowledge about that. When we read about the elections, they already had enough information to have a quick discussion ahead of reading the text. Now, if the week is a normal week, then Monday and Tuesday will be one text, and Wednesday and Thursday will be a different text. I have done it where I've spent the whole 4 days on one text when I have felt the need. I did this in term 1 this year when we read the text as a whole class for 2 days and then buddy read for 2 days. But around partway through term 2, I moved to 2 texts per week. It felt like they were ready. I can always switch this around as well. Now and again I do. Now, before the new text, I have already selected 6 to 8 words that they might not know. It surprises me some of the vocab that is new to them. And I have the words written on cards. They're just those little, about this sort of size, and they're written with Vivid. I discuss what the word means. I provide a few sentences, and then the children then discuss this in their groups. I ask one or two to put it in their own sentence. I do not ask for volunteers. I cold call. The expectation is that everyone in the group is discussing. And while they are discussing the words in their groups, I walk around the room, listening into a few as well. This helps keep them focused. If a child cannot give a response, I'll ask someone else, but I usually will come back to that child though, and they'll get the help that they need to give a response. If it's pretty clear as I walk around that the students all know the word, then I move straight on to the next word. I want this to be fairly pacey and not take up too much time. All of this is orally done. If I have more time, I have created a slideshow with the words and pictures and sentences, but this can take me a while to do, so this is not all the time. I also find that the cards are really great to have nearby so that any time of the day, for example, when they're leaving at the end of a block or at the end of the day, I can hold up one of those cards and I can ask, who can put this word into a sentence? Or I can hide it. Who can spell it? Or who can give the meaning to that word? All that sort of thing. So though I have had words on a slideshow sometimes, the cards are my preferred method at the moment. Now, the words are not necessarily the hardest words. Sometimes those really tricky topic-specific words may just get a quick explanation as we read the text. I want the words on the cards to be the ones that the children will likely use again and hopefully in their writing. So here is a very short clip showing a word being discussed. These were words from the previous day. My student was videoing this and was trying not to show any faces. So I think he did quite a good job. And a few of the words that we were looking at yesterday, have a little quick revision, all right? The first one, electorate. Talk in your groups about what electorate means. You've got no electorate. What is it? Okay, electorate. What does electorate mean, please? Erin. Like when you vote, you don't count it in their place. Yep. Do we have a president in New Zealand? No. We have a prime minister. Okay. So the electorate, as you said, is the area around where you live, where those people who want you to vote for them in that area. Okay. If you can't vote for somebody who is in a different area to where you live. All right, in your group now, put an electorate in a sentence. Okay, so you can see they've gone on to discuss that. Oops, we'll go to the next one. Okay, so day one. After the new vocab has been completed, we move on to the text. Probably the hardest thing of all is getting them to put their name on their copy of the text and not lose it. And I have trialed a few things, and I think that next year I might have a clear file. I'm not sure. I'll see. So day 1 and 2 are usually a Monday and a Tuesday, but not always. There are often only 4 days in a week due to holidays, sports, trips, whatever. Now, last year I had no learning assistant. So for my really lowest 1 or 2, I would try to get them and hear them on their decodables before school or during library or at any spare time I had in the afternoon. They still got their extra time. Once we're ready, we've got our rulers or something similar, we begin. And I encourage them to read like I read. So sometimes I say, like you're reading the news, try to read as one reader, stick together. And I read and then they repeat. Now and again, I will ask a child to read, but only if I have glanced ahead and the sentence is easy. But this helps to keep them focused because they never know when this might happen. And I move around the room as we read. Then we put the texts away safely, and that's the second hardest thing of all. And as I say, next year I'll have a little bit of a trial with different ways to organise that. But I always have a few spares because they get needed. So here is another little clip. This time it is of me reading and the students are echo reading.
Only male landowners have the right to vote. Everybody? No. So does that mean I wouldn't be allowed to vote? No. Okay, next sentence.
Okay. So day 2, we review the vocab again. And I'll get the students to discuss the words in their groups before I call on a few of them to share their sentences with us. I always try to have them discuss in their groups first. Sometimes I pull a name from a cup just instead of calling on anyone. And then we move on to reading with our buddies. And the buddies are matched, a stronger reader with a less able as they go down the list. Then they move to their buddy spaces around the room. And I've found that having them automatically go back to the same space every day just saves time. And they read the text, they take turns. They can choose whether to read at a sentence level or at paragraph level. And I wander around listening in. If the buddy cannot read a word, then the other buddy helps them. If their buddy is away, then they join the next pair underneath them on a chart. So I've got a chart on the wall, all the buddies are matched up. So if your buddy's away, you drop down and join the 2 underneath. This doesn't...
Can I ask a question there, Mary?
Yep.
So my question is, you've got the children organised into a list of how you've paired up the buddies. Could you share how do you order that list of sort of your strongest readers to the ones who need the most support? Have you got some tips on how we might do that?
Yeah, I basically put them out, the kids who scored, like I look at PATs, any results that have come through. And I think it was a little, maybe I knew them a little bit into the year, but I just put them, from what I knew from strongest right through. And then I just sort of pair up top with somewhere around about middle, and looking at names kind of carefully, knowing a few personalities, that I thought would probably work. And as I say, I've shifted them a couple of times through term 1, and now at the stage of the year, they're fine, like pretty much got them.
Quite consistent now.
Change them. Yeah, I mean, if I had a reason to change them, I probably would. Yeah.
No, that's great. And then my second question there is, you said that they'll help the other person with any words that they might struggle. And have you taught them any specific things to do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. So at the start of the year, I do a little bit about being patient with people. We're not going to huff and puff at them. I model a little bit, and just basically make it so it's absolutely okay. There's no big deal. Yeah, it didn't take too much work, but definitely not waiting too long. If the buddy's a little bit stuck, tell them the word, move on.
Sorry, so they tell them the word after they've given them a bit of a chance to work it out themselves.
But not too long. We don't want it to be painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So what I'm hearing a lot is that you've taught them some quite specific routines, like go back to the same place and don't wait too long, give them the word so that they know what to do, and it's saying the same each time you're doing it. Yeah, that sounds really helpful.
It takes a wee while, and a few of those things that seem obvious now, it took me a while to figure out that was sort of the obvious thing. But the more things that you can do where you don't have to think about it, it's just set, the easier it is for them just to get on to the task at hand.
Well, something else I noticed in that wee video clip there was you said a really specific task for them to do in that group discussion. So you said, now put the word electric in a sentence. And I'm guessing I saw you do this really quietly. You went like this with your hands. And is that the same thing you do every time so they know that?
Pretty much, yeah. And now and again through the year, I'll have a wee practice because we've got rubbish at it again. So, nothing... It's ragged. It's not all silky smooth. And now and again, we have a wee practice. But basically, the idea, as soon as somebody starts to see me counting down, and usually I'll start to chime in about number 2 or 1. I've got a wee squeaky ball. Sometimes I'll use that. But the idea is to get them quiet fairly quickly.
We don't want that chatter to keep going. Okay, I'll let you carry on. Thank you.
Oh, So yeah, with the buddies too, if I've got quite a few away on a given day because they're all off representing the school at something or whatever, then I have those kids come up to me straight away and I just quickly pair them up. I just take a quick look and okay. And if I want to, I can actually listen to one, and I do that sometimes as well. So that's up to me. So the length of the text, this takes a little bit of trial and error. Usually I have like a side to a side and a half of A4. But if the text is longer, then I will split that into two, and I'll work on one side of the paper for the first 2 days, and then the other half the second 2 days, especially if there's quite a lot of discussion. So here are a couple of clips. These are the kids' buddy reading. And you can see there, you can see my little cursor. So this student's got a ruler, and this one's using one of our little whiteboards, which we're starting to absolutely love.
Interest or shock enough that they will want to even further and believe it. Fake news websites and channels push their fake news stories to try and mislead viewers. They want to spread incorrect information through social media and networks and word of mouth. Some news articles have misleading headlines.
Okay, so you can see we've been doing a little bit of reading just recently about fake news, and they're quite enjoying that. And this is another little group, a little. Okay, so there you go. And so a bit of a summary now of buddy reading. They need to be reminded to use their ruler all year long. They don't want to do this. And both buddies use their ruler at the same time. So I'm following with my ruler on my text, even if my buddy is the one doing the reading. It takes a wee bit of a few weeks at the start of the year to get this going, but then it works. So I walk around listening, observing, helping. While they're buddy reading, if I want to, I can work with a small group or individuals, depending on the needs. But if one buddy is stuck, they wait a few seconds, they say the word. Also, if one buddy wants, they can request that they read the next passage together. It doesn't tend to happen, but it is an option. So here are some buddies reading, and you can see they've got a ruler or similar. And now, so day 1 and 2 are usually Monday and Tuesday. And then day 3 and 4 are usually Wednesday and Thursday. I don't always get the 5 days, but I try hard to make the literacy block a priority in a day. It is first thing. And next one. Now, day 5. Day 5, if I get it on a Friday, I've got lots of options. Last year, when I didn't have a learning assistant, I used Friday as a setup day for the independent code group. The code is a systematic approach for teaching spelling that we use here at Summerland, and I'm sure many of you use it as well. It's from a book of the same name written by Liz Kane. So my top code group had a lesson with me on a Friday, and then I would hand out their activities for the following Monday through Thursday. So these activities were extension type ones, working on Latin or Greek words or prefixes or suffixes and the like. They knew what to do for each day. So they were on a Friday, we'd have their mini lesson, sheets were pasted in, whatever, you're good to go, you know what you're going to be doing next week, right? So they knew which job to do on a Monday and so on. Fridays are really good for that sort of thing. I did that with my top maths group as well, set them up for the next week. It makes Monday a day when they all hit the ground running. And if I have no learning assistant next year, I'll do the same thing. Whatever needs to be put in place for the next week to run smoothly, it can happen on a Friday. But this year, I often buddy read again. And often if there is one of the two texts that was a little harder, I'll have that one that might get the extra day. But I can be flexible with Friday. It's handy as a makeup session if we had an interruption in one of the earlier days. Writing. So I rely heavily on the writing revolution. This text starts at sentence level teaching and progresses to writing paragraphs and essays. So we write about the text that we have been reading as a whole class. And we write about what we're learning in our reading time. No one has nothing to write about. We've been reading, we've been discussing in our whole class reading time, and that is what we use as our writing focus. In the past, I might have had to try a dozen different questions to help a child write about their weekend. I don't need to do that anymore. We all have the information that we need. I try to follow the I do, we do, you do approach that Anita Archer started. If you've never seen any of her video clips, I highly recommend them. So she recommends the I do as the teacher thinking aloud, modeling the step being taught, and then the students move to we do when you work, the class works with the teacher together to create some examples together, and then finally the students have a go on their own. So I model the sentence type or the paragraph plan or whatever it is being taught first, then we write some examples together, and then finally I let them write on their own by themselves. This could be days later. Some will still need a scaffold approach, that's fine. I can put a simple sentence on the board and have them change at least one word, one thing. If they still need that level of help, that's fine. So writing, slow down. I have learned that I generally move far too quickly from I do through the following stages. The students need way more time than I ever thought. And of course, some of them need even more than the others. They will get there, but they just need lots more we do. Some will let you know that they can do the next bit. So when we were learning to write a good paragraph plan, on the very second attempt at this, one of my students said, I've already got my own topic sentence. Can I use that? So she didn't even need to use the one that the class had created with me. The high flyers love knowing that they know what to do next. And even my more able students, I've heard them saying this is fun. They love knowing what to do. As they all learn the different sentence types or paragraph structures, they enjoy knowing that they know what to do and that they've got something to write about. I can have the students who need more from me sit near the front or wherever looks best. That's up to me. What I did love was when there was a student, there is a student who struggles. He has really great general knowledge, but he would never have been able to access the rich information because of the simple texts that he would have been reading in my class years ago. And when he was writing, he wanted to know how to spell a great word that he could use in his text. He could have just used the class model, but he was really keen to try on his own, and I was tickled pink, and I tried not to do a little dance in front of him. He still struggles, but he participates in the lessons, and he often shows us that he has more knowledge than many of the others in the room. And he can discuss along with the rest of us. And as a little aside, I've just recently got them all to fill in some certificates. They don't know they're going to be certificates, but I gave them a whole lot of little sort of descriptors. And one of them was, you have amazing information or amazing facts. It was on that line, and he's getting the award for that because so many of the kids knew that he's got a lot of knowledge. So he would never have got that award in a few years ago. So writing across the writing topics. So we are writing about the reading text, either sentence level or paragraph level. I can't always keep up with the paragraph level because there's not always enough new information since last week's paragraph. So for those weeks, I can switch to the chapter book, especially if it's aligned with what we're with our topic. So recently, I did a book report from the Writing Revolution Planning, and that worked really well. You can access their planning blanks online for free. Or I can introduce a new sentence structure or review one from the past while gathering more information on text. So, after a couple of weeks now, we've got more information. Now we're ready to write another paragraph. I like at least 2 texts before we brainstorm to start a paragraph, and that gives us some options. So, writing across a week. We need a lot more review than I ever thought. So Monday is review. I refer to past PowerPoints. I might use the sentence types that have been previously taught, but with a current topic. The mini whiteboards are fun for this. They're motivated to write on them, and I can see at a glance if they are all on the right track. They chin it. So they just hold the whiteboard there.
Did you say chin it?
Chin it, yep.
So put it under your chin, and you as a teacher can just see easily what everyone.
So we've got chin it, park it, wipe it, lid it.
I say click it and stick it with my markers. They have to click the lid on and then stick it under their knee if they're on the mat.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Your big kids will be at tables.
They love drawing on them, and yeah. So, but yeah, no, I'm finding the mini whiteboards are really cool.
So I've seen. I think there might be one coming up. Are you still showing the clip about the vocabulary with the whiteboard?
Probably, I think.
Okay, well, I won't give that one away. But I think you're talking here about doing some sentences on the whiteboard. Is that right?
No, at the moment, I'm just talking about how writing goes across the week.
Yeah, so on a Monday, you said they might use their whiteboard. You're reviewing a sentence.
Review.
You're getting them to do a sentence on a whiteboard. Have you got some examples you're going to show us of the kinds of stuff?
I don't think I have that one. No. So that might be if we were using, say, what we call the red, white, and blue sentence, where we've got three pieces of information joined with commas. So I might say to them, write a red, white, and blue, or we remind ourselves, first of all, what's a red, white, and blue sentence? We might whip up one together. And so then the latest topic, so we've been doing fake news.
Yeah.
I might write one with them first, but we will, and they can write it on their whiteboard. And then I can
So they're sort of sharing three pieces of information that they can remember from that. So it's retrieving what they're learning about too, about fake news.
Yeah.
But they're also doing sentence construction. And quick question before you move on there. How have you learned about the writing revolution? Did you read the book or have you been watching webinars?
I have. I've got my own copy. Love it. Where did I come across that? I can't quite remember. I mean,
But you've not done the course. You've learned all of this just sort of getting,
I haven't done the course.
Looking at maybe some video clips online.
Yes. I'm just trying to remember. I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time. And I watched, I don't know if Anita, no, she wouldn't have. I saw something online possibly.
Quite a few good webinars showing some of the strategies.
So somewhere, look, on my drive to and from work, I'm usually listening to a podcast and some things that I will have picked up from there. But no, once I got my own copy, I think another staff member might have got a copy. But there was a few of us at the same time. We all ordered our own copies, and now a few more staff members have got them. And absolutely,
your old teaching partner.
Yeah.
She started it too. All right, I'll let you continue. Thank you.
Okay.
Just good to know that people can access this. The courses, I've done the course myself and it's incredible. Okay. But you can absolutely get up and running, just one strategy at a time, and you can access a lot of learning that's freely available too. The
book is awesome, and it's very simply laid out, and it makes it all just seem really obvious what to do.
Yeah. So, and do you ever use the Syntax Project slides to help?
I've been looking at that as well, dipping my toes into that one. Just dipping my toes into that, and also Oka, looking at that with maths. That's one of my next sort of playing around with doing that.
Let's come back to maths at the end, because it's just the same. It's the same. And it's the same concept of this equitable access to the learning.
I've been listening
and everybody getting more time with the teacher, isn't it? Yeah.
So I'm playing the last part of this year, I think. Okay, so this is writing across a week. And as you can see, Monday, we talked a little bit about review. And then Tuesday through Friday, we'll be working on, more recently, it's been our paragraphs. This takes a while. So Tuesday could be, first of all, when I start with group brainstorms on the topic, and then we come together and make a class mind map. And then together we will decide what the topic sentence might be, although they are now often using their own. And when we do come together to decide the topic sentence, if they want to copy mine, I'll try and make them or encourage them to at least try and change one word or switch one word out. But more and more now they're using their own topic sentences. But certainly at the start, we all did the same one. And then, so on Wednesday, we might begin the bullet points. There are always 4. And then we'll write the concluding statement using a different sentence type to the topic sentence. So often they'll finish off with a question now. They know that that's quite a nice little way to finish it, or in a little opinion perhaps. But we're tending to get quicker as the kids become used to the writing revolution planning blank. Current thinking suggests that the more time we spend on planning and then reworking a text than on actually writing and publishing it, the better it will be. So we spend a lot more time on planning than I ever used to. In the past, we were lucky to spend 5 minutes on it. In fact, often I'd say, oh, well, if you know what you want to write, just go for it. Not now.
And then all the time went into the draft was not great. So there was so much editing and revision to do. And then we spent loads of time on publishing it all the time. Which
I haven't published anything.
Yeah. So they're getting so much more practice at that planning and construction.
Yeah.
And then they're having to revise their text less because what they produce is so much better quality.
Their plan is really good. They know what to write once they've got their plan. And it's so worth it. So we do this, and this all takes a while. And maybe Thursday we might still continue writing while I go around helping. If we need Friday, then we have that as well. If it needs to run into next week, then that happens as well. There's no real, I don't have a fixed, like this has to be done by then. The fixed more is this has to be done well. So I'll take as long as it takes to get it done. So the organisation, they now have their same allocated seat. I'll change these as needed, but they're organised by every group has to have at least 1 or 2 kids who will talk. So that's how I organise groups these days, because the odd time when I get it wrong, if I've got a grouping of 3 or 4 kiddies who are all very quiet, then you can't turn and discuss and you can't share it. So I make sure we've got some talkers in the group because my program relies heavily on discuss with your group. So that's how we seat it. We have tote trays. They're a total time waster. They crowd around, they can't fit all their stuff in, time is wasted while they're trying to find their books. So now, at the end of a day, and they're mighty motivated at 5 to 3, we set out the same 3 books on their tables for the next day, for the first block. And they know every day now it's the same, reading, writing, handwriting. They grab them, they're quick to go. So before they leave at the end of the day, next day is good to go. And then just before morning tea, there's a little switch around for maths books. And then they stand behind their tables ready to be dismissed. And that's often when I use one of those vocab cards or a question, something like that. So this here is, this was a plan when we did the early Polynesian explorers. So we had a brainstorm and then we came up with that as our topic sentence. You can see there, the Polynesian explorers were great sailors. And then we came up with the 4 key points that we wanted to use. And then together we created, it would be very hard to beat them in a sailing race. And that was our concluding sentence. And so over here, you can see this is a child's writing. And this, I think this was one, if not the first, it was the second time we wrote a paragraph together, but it was really cool. So you can see there the Polynesian explorers were great sailors and so on, beautiful handwriting. And I smile at that because that explicit in there, she got that from me talking about what I was learning and why I was wanting to do. And I was talking about explicit teaching and she was so, and then she's popped that in there and I'm sure that's where she got it from. But you can see there, she's got the same, I believe, very hard to beat in the sailing race. Yeah, so she's got the same topic sentence, the same concluding sentence, but she's turned the bullet points into some pretty cool sentences. And this is an example of the refugees, and this is where the children were all in their groups, and they made their own brainstorms first before we then came together and put one together and then made our topic sentence. The refugees face a very dangerous journey. And then here, this is a child's plan. We should be kind and welcoming to refugees. And then what would you do if a refugee came to your school? So these were the things that this child decided to put as the points, and you can see he's ordered them as he decided this one would be first and so on. And then I think the next slide shows you his piece of writing. Yeah, so that's, and this child is not one of the strongest writers in the class by any means. I just wanted to show you what it was. You know, you would not call him a strong writer, but he's written something I think is pretty cool. We should be kind and welcoming to refugees. They went through a hard journey. We should respect them for that. Most refugees have no friends because they don't have the country's language. Refugees had to walk for days just to get here. They had a lot to do, so don't bully them. What would you do if a refugee came to your school? Now, you can see there's a couple of errors there, but my goodness, he's written something that the message, I think, is really cool, and he's learned some knowledge.
Yeah.
And this one says, the refugees had a perilous journey to run away from war. I don't think I'll read the whole thing, but you can see that it is, they've written a whole lot of stuff about them running away. Does mean you can be separated from your family because of the dark, gloomy nights. After that dangerous journey, if they're still alive, they might even be in a refugee camp and so on. So there are some errors there, but there's a lot of effort gone into that. And also in that particular text, there were quite a few of our vocab words in that piece of writing. So I was quite pleased with that. And this one just shows you how I'm setting it out more and more now. I'm teaching them, I'm going to really hammer this one next year. On the left side of the page, you will put the plan. On the right side of the page, you will put the paragraph. It saves this flipping back and forward and, stuff all over the show. So that's something that it was a trial and error this year that I really will be pushing. Now, this one is just to show you, this little girl was a very reluctant writer at the start of the year. And often, it took her a long time to come up with something, to be honest. Great little girl, but this is the same child now later in the year. And again, she's writing about the refugees and how they had to leave their country, and she's gone on and changed a little bit there and so on. And she's loving her handwriting now. She absolutely loves it. Handwriting's a big deal in our class at the moment. In fact, there's another one here. The year sixes especially, I think, they will bust a gut to get a sticker from the principals. Every day when we do handwriting, somebody will always ask, are you going to send somebody up for a principal sticker today? You're going to send somebody up. So quite often I'll send someone up. But so they're writing stuff, and their handwriting now is starting to cross from just being in their handwriting books to actually getting into their other book, which is the big game. Not with all of them yet, but we're getting there. So this is a typical first block. The learning assistant works with her student while I work with those in my tier 2 group. Then from 9:30 till 10:30, it is all whole class. All the children have had a literacy focus now, then from 10 past 9 through till 10:30. All the children receive 20 to 40 minutes reading instruction every day. We sometimes get Fridays as well, but I work on hoping for at least a minimum of 4 days a week. So this is after morning tea. This is the code group that if I had no learning assistant, I would have set up on the previous Friday to work independently from me. But this year, because I've got the learning assistant, I can work with them each day. And then the learning assistant works with the other group. Fitness, by the way, then I run them ragged because we need to keep up the pace for an hour of maths. After lunch, we have the chapter book, and I always try to leave it at a place where they want more. And so that time is a little bit fluid. They'll regularly shout out no. I actually had a kid the other day when I said no, and I was walking back to the office, my office with the book. I'll pay you for the book. How much can I pay for it? But I pick chapter books that they're really going to like. Then it's the whole class code now for a little bit of time. And then round about 2 o'clock, that's pretty much literacy and numeracy focus for the day is over. And then those times are a little bit flexible because on a Wednesday, sports actually starts a wee bit sooner than that, but that's roughly the idea. And during term 2, I did a rocket unit with Rocket Lab, and so the middle block each Wednesday was given over to that. So for that term, there was a definite need for the Friday catch-up. That was essentially the maths block anyway, but it worked. I made it work. So this timetable is typical, but it's also aspirational. It doesn't always happen every week like this by any means, but this is the goal. So the texts, I get them from anywhere and everywhere. Twinkle has free Sundays most weeks, around twice a year. All you want for 24 hours, they'll give it to you for free. So I've signed up on their email list. I don't pay for anything. That part's free. And when there is the 24-hour free day, I think ahead. I pick 2 or 3 topics that I think will be really good, and I get everything I want for those topics. I download as much as I want. And many of their reading texts have been written at 3 different levels as well. So that's handy. Sometimes I've used level 3, sometimes level 2, sometimes level 1. I just look at the text and I make a call. And then there's some other places there that you can see that I have used that are quite handy.
Question there, Mary, when you said they come at different levels.
Yes.
Can you clarify, do you mean you're giving some children a different level of text, or you're picking the appropriate level for the class?
Yes, so I'm picking the appropriate level for the class. So they have like a little 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. I always look at them. And as I say, sometimes I've decided I think the 1-star will be tricky enough. Sometimes we'll go for the 3-star. And now the novel, I always choose a novel that I've pre-read, and one that I, as an adult, don't want to stop and that I don't want to put down. And then the hot Milo, that kind of happened by accident, and that's something that they don't let go of. I remember a little girl that was towards the end of a term 4, and she must have been, I didn't realize she was going to be in my class next year. But anyway, she came up to me when I was on duty and she said, "Is the rumor true?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said that they get Milo in your room. And I said, "Yes, it's true." So, but yeah, so, and I try and read 2 class novels a term. So we get 8 a year, most years. So there's a bit of a summary of changes over the 4-day week. You can see in 2018, there was approximately 2 hours to 2 hours 20, depending on your level of need. And my writing block in 2018 had a large amount of time spent on individual conferences, whereas now there's a whole lot of whole class instruction. In 2023, for literacy instruction, there's approximately 4 to 5.5 hours, depending again on whether you are in my group getting extra. So the observations. I feel like I'm teaching. It feels really good to be teaching most of the day, to be teaching everyone for most of the day, at least till around 2 o'clock. I'm also no longer as stressed about the time taken to get through the groups, because before I was really aware of getting through the groups in the reading block to then leave enough time to get through the individual conferences in the writing block. Now, if the whole class reading block goes a little bit over, no one's missing out because the next block is whole class writing. So that's still all of the children. Either way, all of the students are getting the instruction time. The children are getting knowledge and they're discussing together. They all get to participate in the discussions. There's a high engagement. There are still times when a student has no response. That's okay. I'll call on someone else and then I'll come back and I'll get them to add a word or reword what has been said. The work in their writing and handwriting books is getting better and better. I'm really happy with the standard compared to what I've observed in previous years. There is always room for improvement, and we will keep working on that. I can see whether they have comprehended or not, depending on what they've written. So when I read their piece of writing, like there's one little child who each time I can see that the student is really not comprehending yet, because when I read something about that she'd written about the refugees. Her text was more on, I think it might be fun to be in the boat. I think it could be. So, you know, it's not obvious. It's not rocket science. She didn't quite comprehend the text at all. So she's one I kind of watch a little bit more. I question a little bit more now that I'm aware that she's not always comprehending. Also, I need far more time on review than I was ever doing. I used to be taught once and done, move on. So this is an area of growth for me. So that's really about it. I hope there was something here of some use to someone.
I'm sure there will be. Would you like to stop sharing that screen? And I've got a few questions for you, if that's all right.
Yep. So there we go. Is that right?
Yeah, that's great. In fact, before we go on, I'll come back to vocabulary because, Mary, on that day, I snapped a picture of your wall with your vocabulary cards because like everything else you shared, I just loved how straightforward and doable your processes are for the rest of us to have a try at. So this is Mary's vocabulary wall, your pocket chart. Would you like to talk us through sort of what
Yeah. Okay. So That's from Scholastic, as I think you can see. And that was using points, I think. And it has got lots of pockets, and there's actually bundles of cards in each one. I don't throw them away, because what I've just started doing, sometimes at the end of term, or sometimes when the wind is in the right direction, I'll grab one of those bundles and I'll say, okay. And you can see their harvest. Okay, who can remember what was harvest? All right, off you go. Who can remember? Who can put nocturnal in a sentence? What was that to do about? What was that to do about? But I don't kind of chuck them out till the end of the year. But there are tons, and many of those, the other side has got a word on as well. So I'm lazy. I don't want to keep cutting up cardboard and wasting it. And
No.
so there are
They're
tons.
literally just strips of cardboard that you snip up and write on in Vivid, and
it's
and
not.
and it's difficult to review vocab that we've done unless we've got that physical copy. So I do use a lot of slides for teaching vocabulary, but you can't pick them up in the same way you can these cards. And there's just endless ways we can use them to make quick little activities to bring them back, so that word gets more and more firmly embedded in their long-term memory, and they really get a better understanding of how that works. So I
was actually listening to a podcast. I can't remember who it was, but she gave me some ideas with vocab like that, and I was thinking possibly either the end of this year, giving groups 2 or 3, or probably maybe a bundle, and having them come up with 1 or 2 of those words, and maybe having put them in a diagram or charades with them or something. I'm not sure, but I think
come up with how they could link those 2 words.
Yeah, I think they're there. So they certainly can be used for, whatever I might want until they get chucked out at the end of the year.
That's right. I'm looking around because I just wanted to hold up this book. So Isabel Beck and Margaret McEwen, Bringing Words to Life, is a book full of simple ways that you could, that's getting blurred, simple ways that you can use those. And you'll find lots of ideas from Beck and McEwen online for vocabulary activities, just to change it up. Lots of different ways to keep bringing those words back. Okay, my next question is, I wrote down some things as you were speaking. So you said now this structure and how you're running this whole class reading, it changes as you learn, which I love, because we're all about, I love the phrase progress, not perfection. So it's never finished, and you're always adjusting and changing. So I'm thinking we might need to have an annual Mary Brown update to get the new structure that we can all put into place, because I think there'll be a lot of people having a try with this after they listen to how you've made it so clear and simple.
Well, I hope it's helpful to someone. If it is, that's fine. If not, I'm still keep doing it anyway.
It will be. Now, when you were speaking about the ancient Egypt example, and you spent 6 weeks in that topic and just going deeper and deeper into the learning, what really struck me about that is that you're really building, or the kids are really building, a community of learning. So they really, there seems to be a lot of speaking, listening, together, talking about the same things. And the way you said that transferred over into their excursion to see the Egypt exhibition. So what do you notice a difference in that aspect compared to how you did literacy in your classroom before? Like what's different now for the kids?
Well, I guess we know that we know some stuff, and we know quite a lot of stuff. Whereas before, you might be reading about how, I don't know, Auntie Sue lost the eggs on the way to the bakery or something. I don't know. It really didn't matter what we read before. It actually didn't matter because it was at their level. That's kind of how it was, that's what we did.
Yeah. So you might be reading about Auntie Sue one day and then Kiwi the next, and recycling on Thursday, and
whatever.
Build on itself.
And
they sound like they're really rigorous.
Like with ancient Egypt, like we've one of the parts was when we were reading about Queen Cleopatra and the shenanigans that her younger brother got up to when he got a little bit older and he didn't want to share power with her, and he tried to do something with the sewage and the drinking water, and and we were reading about that, and the kids are absolutely fascinated because sewage was one of the words, of course, but one of the little boys put his hand up and he said, is this really true? And I said, yes, it is. You know, he was fascinated by some of the stuff that was true, and that the younger brother would kicked her out and how she rolled herself up in a mat to get back in. And I overheard the kids discussing, and I didn't quite realize they didn't quite know the difference between a mat and carpet. And they were trying to picture how, you know, things like that. It is always surprising, some of the stuff you don't know, or you assume they know. But there was a great discussion. No, look like this. This is carpet in the room, they're saying. No, the mat is one that, you know, you is smaller and on the back. But and with Howard Carter, and all the different tombs and things that he you know, well, the Tutankhamun for a start, but then we were talking about how there are many other tombs that have yet to be discovered, and their eyes lit up. And we were talking about, yeah, imagine if you find Queen Cleopatra's tomb, and they're like, whoa, you know.
Yeah. So and it's a real context for them, a real world link. You know, that's really brought it to life for them. So I guess on that conversation point there, you know, you keep mentioning discussion. So are there any tips that you could give the rest of us that you find helpful, that sort of help to structure the discussion? Like, I imagine it's not just a free-for-all, they're not just talking. So are there particular phrases you say, or prompts or questions you tend to use that help?
Well, it's often like, I'll say, you know, talk about it with your buddy, and they'll, you know, talk about it. And then, as I say, sometimes I'll ask if somebody wants to share something. So it's not always cold calling, but if there's a particular thing, obviously. But I just structure as much as possible. I mean, sometimes they're going to get quite excited and talk over the top of each other, you know, and they can't believe things or whatever. And so then you'll just, you know, have to bring it back, or squeak, you know, have the little squeaky ball or whatever.
Nice thing to have to bring back on track, though, if they're actually talking about the content.
They're talking about it, you know, they find it fascinating. Now, the odd time I have had a text where I've felt probably 10 minutes into it, I've picked a dud. That has happened, and I let it die real quick. I'm not going to carry on with it the next day. Like, as soon as, and it's probably 2 or 3 times this year. I can't remember the one most recent, but I get into it and I feel like, nah, this is a dud. This is not going to happen. So we'll finish it off, and the next day there's a whole different text.
So I'm thinking that this conversation, what you're really doing is sort of together building up a really good picture to deeply understand that piece of text. So as you go, you're sort of talking about what that means and clarifying things. And so the things that you use to arrange your reading program around, like making inferences and making predictions and summarizing, it sounds like you're kind of doing that as you go.
And that is a thing that I'm thinking about as well. I was actually listening to a podcast on the way home today about a guy in America and what he does, and I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. But yes, so obviously when I read what they've written, I've got a very good idea of their comprehension. What they're writing is finding key points and main ideas, and other things like with the class chapter book, I can get into things more, the questioning around we can infer, or we can look at things around that. So there's always a little bit of discussion, not too much. Not too much, because I don't want to kill it for them. But I will stop the chapter. Usually, there could be 3 or 4 questions in each reading where I'll stop and say, why did she say that? Or what is it that they're referring to here? Or that kind of a thing, just to have wee discussions. Or like the one we're reading at the moment, where the one of the main characters, she has got what you call a bit of a predicament. She has kept a secret with her best friend, and she's basically got 2 choices. She either keeps a secret, and the main character could die, but he's her best friend and they've known each other forever, and there's reasons why she will keep the secret, or she will tell the authorities, she will risk ruining their friendship, he will be picked up. So it's a problem that we talk about. Okay, do you think she should share the secret or not? Do you think she should tell? Why? We've had big discussions about that one. That's our writing this week, because that was, again, I needed a bit more time for the fake news one that we've just started. So we were writing about should Jessie tell or not. So we brainstormed a whole lot of why you think she should share the secret, why you think she shouldn't.
Mm.
And then they had to choose one or the other. And then I talked about being on the fence, and what sitting on the fence meant. And if you want to choose to sit on the fence, you can. But we've got them interesting. Some we haven't shared them yet. I haven't. That's a job for tomorrow. We'll be finishing those or early next week. But I'm interested to see, sort of what they're thinking about.
They've got a lot to say to put into that thinking and talking. So they're talking, they're saying it, and they're writing it as well. So if people are interested in finding out more about that sort of really flipped approach, the phrases you want to look for is putting text at the center, and that we still are really, thinking out loud, modeling those comprehension strategies, the really evidence-based ones. There's a good body of research about teaching kids how to think about, self-monitor their understanding and how to go back and build it up. But we're using those in the service of reading complex text, because when we're reading text at their level, it's not very complex, and there's not many opportunities to actually use those strategies and grapple with something that's hard to crack open. So this is giving them lots of chances to really work through that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We kind of, I think, all together really enjoy it. And even some of the times when we've read something, I'll say, I never knew that. That's amazing. Or,
they're really learning all together. So, I've had a few other colleagues share that when they've changed from that sort of group rotation book-based guided reading into a more whole class approach, there's a couple of concerns. I know that teachers be thinking and wondering the same thing. So I'll ask a few of those. How would you compare the planning load on you before and to now?
First of all, I have to say I'm someone who likes to plan. I'm always thinking ahead. I actually enjoy it. But once, like for the writing now that I'm into the writing revolution, I know how it goes. It's kind of easy for me. So I'll pick the topic that we're going to write about. I know how the whole thing goes. With the reading, again, if I find a good text, I know what I'm doing with it. I know I'm going to be looking at the vocab. I know we're going to be buddy reading it, and that's going to be my writing. It's not rocket science. It's not really that hard.
No, so you're no longer sort of for 5 different group levels. You're not picking 5 different journals, 5 different follow-ups for them to do independently.
It was a work of art, to be fair. That I loved that whiteboard with all these, after school today, moving the things around, but it was trying to always make sure that you kept changing these things and making sure that they, I don't know, there was the activities had to be such that everybody could do them without you, and it was always a challenge. They're never kind of on their own in that sense, and that they're never far away from me, either from putting their hand up and in the discussion, or I'm walking around the room. It's hard to kind of be left on their own. Whereas before, I'd be looking at the group in front of me, and I'd know sometimes that those two over there, I can tell they're blimmin' well not doing what they're supposed to be doing, but I've got to focus on these kids at my feet. So
what would you say then, if anybody felt concerned that doing it this way might reduce the development of learner agency, and kids becoming independent learners? I mean, do you feel that this impacts it, or it helps it, or it hinders it? Any comment there?
Oh, I think because as soon as they, like with the writing and that, as soon as they know, like with the paragraph planning, for example, quite a few of them know how it works now. They fly ahead. They don't have to wait for me. And they're writing more than one paragraph. You can't hold them back. They find it very exciting. And same with the reading. I mean, kids who would never have had access to that level of discussion have access to it now. They're getting a lot of help. Now I have that tier 2 group. So those kids are working on their decodables, and a slightly different structure. So they're still building
those foundation skills, but at the same time, they're getting into this reading,
not being denied,
building that vocabulary and language and understanding of those more complex things. Okay, next question about whole class reading then, is the idea that, so I think it's ingrained into us in New Zealand that if we're not differentiating, we're not a good teacher. We're not individualizing and teaching to everybody's point of need. I think you've said so many things that will help people sort of at least consider trying it out because of
It is scary.
the positive impacts that
You have
you've
to
seen.
be, yeah, I mean, it is scary to start doing that. And fortunately, I work at a school where one of the not our code of conduct and something where we are all to be professionally brave. And that was my kind of, I'm going to have a go at this. Our management has always been really supportive of us having a go and being professionally brave and having a go at something different. And because
sorry to interrupt. I think what I've been hearing you say though as well is you're doing less in small group time, which we would have thought was our differentiation, yet you're teaching more and you are lifting children's learning in this way than you could have in the small
when I look at their writing, not so much their handwriting as well, but when I look at actually what they have written, their texts as a cohort, I'm very convinced that I've never had such good writing across a group. Now, there are still children who struggle. And there are still days when the lesson I feel like, that was subpar. I'm not saying everything's, ticky-boo all the time. It's not. I don't want people to think that. But as a group, I'm really pleased with what they're writing. And the high flyers, I think they're extended because it used to be too much free choice perhaps on what you were writing, or there'd be a prompt, but this way not only are they all getting the sentence structure, and it's starting from what they know and then using that sentence structure to go on to what our topic that we've been reading and writing about is. They've got good quality sentence structures to write and to use for their good quality information, their facts.
And all of that focus on the vocabulary too, you're seeing that the vocabulary choice come into their writing. So 2 more questions about the whole class versus small group. One is we're calling it whole class reading, but is it always everybody's having a discussion together in the space, or is there some, we've all got the same text and there's still some small group or partner collaborative work going on within that structure as well? Do you have it?
So you're talking about when they're reading?
Yeah, during the reading part.
During the reading part, that's when they turn in their groups and they'll discuss things. Is that what you?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking. So it's not we're in a circle and we're one person speaking at a time.
Yeah.
Although it's whole class, we're all working within and discussing the same text. There's small group and partner things going on as well.
Yeah. So the biggest group is 4 and the smallest group is 3. So in their 3s and 4s, and from time to time when I'll ask a child who can tell me, after they've had their discussion, I try and always do the discussion first, who can tell me about whatever it might be. If a child looks blank, I'll say, did you talk about it with your group? Did you listen? Okay, everybody. And I'll give them, let's try that again. Make sure someone in your group, and I'll go over to that group and hover. But generally, if I'm walking around, that kind of helps keep everybody focused. And I can just listen into what's being said. And sometimes if a discussion is perhaps a little, not off track, but the information's not quite true, I can correct that as I'm listening, that kind of thing. But it's not terribly hard.
No. So that's the next question then. Another concern people might feel is if we're not working with children in small groups, how will I know my learners as readers and writers? So how do you feel you know them and what they're capable of now compared to when you had them in small groups?
Well, I can see their writing. So, I can see what they're writing now compared to what they wrote at the beginning of the year. They're reading other test results that I've gotten. Some of the test results I've been quite pleased with. And I guess my challenge would be to people who are doing lots of groups. If you're doing lots of groups and it's working for you and you're not feeling stressed out and hassled and your kids are learning information and you think it's worthwhile information that they're all learning, then keep doing it. Mine,
that's really good advice. But I think also I'm hearing you say, I'm listening in, I can hear what they're discussing. And when you're doing that for half an hour, about a
Yeah.
text versus having them and rushing through for
Yeah.
12
Yeah.
to 15 minutes. In that time, they have to read the text and have a few minutes to have a bit of a quick surface level discussion. It sounds like you're hearing
Well, I'm
much
wandering
deeper
around.
comprehension going on.
I'm listening in. I purposely crouch down beside them, my poor old knees. But I do that a lot. They can expect me to be hovering over them, listening on in any given day and probably every day. So they're all doing it. They're all reading because there's not really much else you can be doing. You've got your rules.
How's the sort of the behaviour and engagement going now compared to small group? I think actually you may have touched on that already.
The small group one was, I mean, there was always the majority of the children who would love those other tasks anyway. They liked going on the computer. Some kids liked, doing the reading, but there was always a few mucking around, and it was, you tried to make sure that the activity that you chose was one that was very engaging so that you could mitigate that, but it wasn't always possible. Whereas now they've got people beside them who are reading with them or reading to them. They could get called on to answer a question after the discussion. So, and I'm walking around, I'm by them all. I'm not just with the 6 at my feet, because I used to be kind of planted in that one spot for the reading lesson or the writing time when I was doing the conferences, whereas I'm not planted now. I'm here, there and everywhere. And you've got eyes, you can see where you might need to move over to there to make sure something's, someone's on task or whatever.
Brilliant. Okay. So many positives to the way you're doing it. Right. I think everyone's going to want to know, seeing those writing samples, now we didn't prepare for this one, Mary, but what's your handwriting approach? So how are you managing to get their writing like that? So I see you've got, is it 10 or 15 minutes a day in there?
Yep. So it's usually 10 or 15 minutes, to be honest. I'm just going to sneak, because I had a sneaky little, the right lesson. So I paid, the school paid, I took it out of my expenses. I think it was $30 for the year for the right lesson. And this is a Kiwi woman who does a really good job and that hooked them in. They were listening to her. I would pause the video. I would put it up. I've got one of those big magnetic lined whiteboard things, that stick up onto the big whiteboard. Pause the lesson. Here's where we start, da-da-da-da-da. We are now doing what is called New Zealand cursive. It's not the cursive that I learned at school. It's what I'd call much simpler, sort of a flick to join kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What I found that research suggests that after 3 years, if the child is still not writing a very good print script, forget it. They've learned it the wrong way. But when you start teaching this sort of to join cursive writing, it's very hard to do everything backwards because the letters, the flick joins on to wherever it is. And I was going to say something else about that. Oh, and they really like it. Nice. Most of them, 1 or 2 probably not, but the majority of them love it. And as a group, their handwriting is the best I've ever had, without a doubt. And as I said,
I think planning for you and just a really good quality lesson that you're working through to support.
And I think, sorry to the lady that made that PowerPoint, but I've learned enough now from her that I don't know that I'd need to pay for it next year.
I'm sure Belinda would be thrilled to hear that, because she would want everyone to feel more confident and competent in handwriting.
They do like listening to her, and they do like her on the big screen, like they can see her hand.
Yes.
So
nice close up, isn't it? Just of the page and a lovely black pen going. It's very mindful.
But they also like now and again I'll show them, they'll say, is that how you did that letter when you were at school? So I'll show them how I did the G and all the rest of it. Can we do it like that? Can we do it like that? So some of them are now doing that kind of a thing and they love it. And as I say, the goal is more and more to transfer it from their handwriting books into other writing areas, which a number of them are doing, not the whole lot yet.
So how do you keep them accountable for doing their best writing? What are your tips? So you're using a video, you're modeling it again on the whiteboard, and then you're moving around?
Yeah, so the word might be can. So we watched her do the word can or something. I've modeled it. I pressed pause on the thing. Now I'm walking around. No, you need to start here. What did you do that in the margin for? Don't be doing that. I'm not sending.
You're giving that immediate feedback to them. It's not independent.
Yeah, no, I'm walking around. Far more walking around than I ever used to do. for sure. But as I think I mentioned, they bust a gut to get that sticker from the principals. They really do.
Those
So
gold ones, same as when I was at school.
I don't know. Yeah, I think they are. Sometimes one of the principals, because we've got co-principals, she loves writing a comment in cursive back to them.
Oh.
Which they will love. But yeah, they just love going up for the sticker. But they can see that their writing is neat. I mean, at parent interviews, I had a parent take a little photo of one of the children's writing, and this was a child who typically their writing wasn't the best. And another one just recently, the parent said, "I've always been told that one of the goals is his writing, but it's not now." And I can, the parent could see the writing was nice, and I said, "Well, you can see it like I can." Like,
lovely. It's really a really tangible progression to see the actual handwriting improve.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we have a little quick chat about maths and whole class maths, we've been having a little look at. One last question about writing there. So you took us through lots of the sentence and paragraph level work that you're doing in response to the non-fiction and fiction text that you're reading, like a book report or a paragraph with facts. What is the place now, and how are you bringing in like narrative writing or other kinds of writing?
Good question. Yep.
Balance these days?
Yep. So what I did recently when we were using the chapter book as our writing source, like we were going to be writing about what something happened in the chapter book. And this was a book last term, I think. I thought, I haven't done anything much on setting and character description, plot, that sort of thing. So I got one of those fairly generic worksheets, and we talked about one of the characters in the book, and I modeled, this is the setting, this is the problem, the plot, and so on, and describing the character. And then they each did one with either they could use my model to help them or their own thing, or choose a different character. But I brought it in like that. And
sort of a book summary, like a story.
Yeah, and we've also done a little book one, your opinion on who you think the book was for, tell me why. So you can get those other things in. They've also done, when we were looking at the tribes in the Amazon, the ones who have had very little to no contact with humans, they had to write not with humans, sorry, with the Western world.
With the outside world, yeah.
With the outside world. And we've all seen that photo of the guy holding the spear looking up at the plane when the people were flying overhead. So they had to write an opinion piece based on that, whether they thought we should make contact with these people or not, and justify from what they knew. So you can put it in. I haven't yet done a lot on pure
creative writing. And
I was thinking if I had a wee bit more time, I probably could with the ancient Egyptians, if we'd gone a little bit more into the different, because they know that there were slaves, they know scribes and all that sort of thing. Which job do you think you would have liked, and tell me why, or make up a story about a day in the life of the pharaoh or something like that. We could do that. And that is an area that I am aware of.
It's really different to how and as you said, you're always shifting and changing the balance and tweaking little bits and pieces. Sounds like a lot less sort of personal recounts, and in fact, I don't think that even must feature in your classroom.
It's not a lot of that. I don't think. I'm just trying to no, not really. Look, and to be honest, when we used to write about your weekend, some of the kids, I just think, you really don't have much to write about. I don't know how you're going to make this whiz-bang.
No, it's very hard to write about things that when we don't have much to say, and you're really building up a huge fund of things that they can draw from in their writing, which enables them to write much better quality. All right, Mary, that was an incredible walkthrough of a really, really straightforward but comprehensive literacy program for year 5-6. And I won't share numbers, but I've seen Mary's data and the impact she's had on those learners, and it is phenomenal.
Not everything's the bee's knees, but I'm pretty happy with some of the results. And just to remind you that everything I've said here, probably half of that will have changed by this time next year.
Well, as I said, we're going to have to do an annual Mary Brown webinar. Right, tell us let's have a little quick chat about how you might be transferring this experiment. Well, no, 4 years you've been doing this now, but how you might be transferring that into your maths practice now.
Well, there's a few things. I don't know if people have seen much to do with Oka education, but I've been looking at that and listening to a few podcasts and so on. So there's a few things I'm toying with at the moment. One is where there's a suggestion that after you've done your basic facts and your kind of the revision type thing, that when you're coming to teach the thing, whatever the topic is, that it's a 30-40-30 rule. So you've got
let's give an example. So say we're going to be teaching
geometry, how to find the internal, I don't know, to do with angles and triangles or something like that. I'm not sure. Okay.
Great example.
But so the thinking is, and I haven't done much to do with this yet, but it's my next sort of thing, that you've got three basic groups in your class. You've got the children who are struggling, you've got the children who are at where you would want them to be, and you've got the children who are achieving quite highly.
Mm-hmm.
So the thinking is that the first part of the lesson, the 30% of the time,
mm-hmm.
is geared towards the lower end of the group. And you're making sure that whatever you're teaching, they will be able to grasp. Oh, and I forgot to say, you should be budding them up again in the same way with literacy. So you've got your mathematicians who are up here, buddied with your mathematicians here, and kind of like that. All right.
Okay.
So you've got, and I haven't, this is where I'm heading, but so you've got that 30% of the time where your teaching is geared towards that lower group of the class, and they've got their buddies. That would also be review work for the middle group, obviously, because it's, a little bit
consolidating and
from when they work. And then 40% of the time will now be geared towards the middle. Mm-hmm. And because you've got the buddies, by default, sometimes those buddies in that lower group are going to get pulled up, because they're going to be learning and discussing and sharing, and they're going to be exposed to it. No one's being denied, again, access to it, because everybody's going to be listening. And then the last 30% or thereabouts of the lesson is geared towards the top group. And again, they might be pulling up some of the middle group. The students at the lower end are still going to be hearing it all. And I guess with some topics, especially some of the geometry type topics or something, it's very plausible that those children will get pulled along for the ride, because typically the kiddies in the lower group, it's to do with basic facts, times tables, the number kind of stuff. I'm not sure, but that's exciting. I think
some conceptual understanding that they can develop through the talking and the seeing.
So that's something I'm sort of looking at. We do in our school a prime maths book approach, which is very good. But I'm looking at maybe having prime 3 days a week, and then maybe Oka whole class stuff 2 days a week.
Yep. So you're thinking about doing that sort of daily review.
Yeah, the daily reviews are awesome.
Yeah,
they're awesome. I don't know, if anyone hasn't seen them, you need to go and find the book, and it's all out there for free. And I think it's a non-for-profit.
Yeah, so I think not for profit. So Mary, I've taken a list of all of the great references you've given in our. Put this online. We'll put links to all of your recommends, and Oka will be on there. But yeah, the daily reviews are slide decks that bring back maths that we've done yesterday, last week, last month, last year. So they might be telling the time, they might be naming these solid shapes, they might be working out ratios, all just a little bit of everything. And again, you use the mini whiteboards for that.
Yeah. So. They love the mini whiteboards. In fact, I've got to find a way of stopping them drawing on the mini whiteboards when I think what I just started doing is I'm going to start calling it flip it, where they have to turn it face down. So
as a double-sided, that's not going to help us.
Oh, as a not. So that could be a benefit for the double-sided. But on the other thing I was thinking with the maths that I think kind of worked quite well this year was in the whole class, because I did do a bit of whole class maths anyway, but using the PAT results, you can get on one of the sheets, you can get a list of all of the questions that in order that your class struggled the most with. And so you can click on the little arrow thing at the top. Yeah. So then you've got literally for your year 5s and then your year 6s on a separate sheet. You've got the questions that a big group of the class got wrong.
And so you can see that's a whole class need, not a small group.
Yeah. So you can target some of that whole class stuff to those. It's not, it's not too hard. So like one of them that a lot of them got wrong was, for example, when you're reading a graph or a telegraph or something, and it might have the little icon equals 5. And so they would typically just look at the number of circles or the number of things, or how many children went by car or whatever, and they might say 6. So they weren't paying attention to the little icon meant 5 or 2 or whatever. So
I bet they did. I bet they improved on that after you did ancient Egypt, because their counting system has like a jug's 100 and a sheaf of
we
wheat.
decided that the counting system was a bit rubbish. How long it had to be.
Well, that'd be a good opinion piece as well for you. You got maths and writing. Oh, right. Mary, we're on 2 hours, which has been an amazing discussion. I'm just so grateful that you've
well, if anyone's stuck at this long,
I'm sure they will, Mary, because there's just so much great just so much practical, applicable wisdom and knowledge that you've shared, and you've put it all into practice, and it's just so useful for new teachers, experienced teachers who want to change. I mean, look at you've changed things up so much in the last 4 years.
I would also say to, especially to new teachers, you need to make it your own. You'll kill yourself trying to do exactly what you think I'm doing, because there's probably some things that I've assumed or you've assumed, like, don't feel you have to, you make it your own, for sure.
No, that's great advice. Well, thank you for sharing your own plan. It's been absolutely superb.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mary.